Well, good morning, Scott. I'm coming to you this morning. You're in Utah. Where are you at exactly?
Live in Provo, Utah.
God's country. I love it there.
It's beautiful. I love the mountains.
Well, I called you up and we talked the other day because you finally got a book out about the experiences you have, your NDE and your life and things going on in your world, and I think it would be of interest to the people that follow me to also take a look at this and look at your book that you have out there. But the main thing is, I don't know if you realize this. Your first interview on this NDE that you had, I think that set the YouTube record for over 20 million views for an NDE on one person. That's truly an amazing number. If we can get 24 people, your family on here, I'd be happy. But that's an amazing number. So that speaks to your power of your story, because that thing was posted without any advertising. You didn't have a book out. You weren't nationally known. You were just a guy in Utah telling his story. And it came across as authentic and a beautiful experience. And people want to know about it. And now they want to know about the book. So let's start just as this near-death experience happened. A little bit about your background and then how this thing all came about. And then we'll talk about making the book and everything. But I think they need to hear the story here. So I'm going to kind of let you go.
Well, it was kind of unusual because I was walking along the river trail one day and my friend Wes came by, and he said about a year ago he had heard that I was not afraid to die. And I told him that's the truth. And he said with COVID-19 going on, it'd be really good if you might be able to give people hope. And the first thing I told him was no, because of the sacredness of my experience. And then he asked me to please reconsider and do it because of being able to help so many people. And again, I told him no. And he asked me, he said, would you at least please think about it? And he is a producer, a film producer of podcasts, and I walked away from him. Bill, I came home and I told my wife what had happened at the river trail. And she asked me, she says, I think maybe you better pray about this. And when I went in and I prayed about it, the first thing that came to mind was all about the one. And I thought at that time, being selfish as we can be, I said, well, I'm the one. What do you want? What about this one? Meaning myself. And all of a sudden it came up, it talked about, I saw the Jesus Christ talking to the shepherd and asking him what happens when you lose one of your sheep in your flock. And he said, well, I go after it. He said, what do you do with the other 99? Well, they'll be okay. I'm more worried about that one. And then everything started coming together in my mind, that if I could help just one person with my story, then I have done everything that was asked of me. And it was very humbling because, we get set in our selfish minds. And we don't think about our neighbors or our friends or people you come in contact with. And that's the things that started coming to my mind, is how I could be more service oriented and pay attention to what my Father in heaven is prompting me to do. And after that, Bill, I called up Wes, and I said, I'll do it on one term. I said, if I can just tell my story the way it is, no interruptions. I want to say it. I want to walk away and be done with it. And to be honest, Bill, I thought that was going to be the end of it 3 years ago. And needless to say, it totally changed my life. I'm talking to people all over the world, just like you do. And you're a great example to the people around the world because of your not about only your influence, but your ability to talk to people and communicate with people. Well, Bill, I'm 70 years old. I'm just a guy that retired in 2005, and I was just enjoying my retirement. And I've been pulled out of retirement now and talking to people all over the world, media all over the world, and why they're asking me to do this, I still don't understand that, but I guess it's all part of God's plan to maybe give people just a little bit of hope. And when I told my story, I prayed about it because I'm a pretty simple person. I'm not, I'm not famous in the world. I'm just me. And all I wanted to do is just talk about it and be real about it and just walk away. Well, another friend of mine said, this is going to lead into a book. And I said, no, it's not. He says, it's going to lead into a book because there's going to be people that are going to want to know a little bit more. And, I've said no so many times and just got egg put all over my face, but I did do a book. And this was probably one of the hardest things that I've ever done because I'm not a writer. But what I did do is I found a ghostwriter. Her name is Sandy Ponton. And I tried to communicate with her what my experience was. And it was one of the hardest things that I had to do because she didn't understand what I was talking about. The brilliant colors, how I see things a lot different now. And some of the gifts that I came back with, I can't really talk about them because they're so sacred in my heart. Well, this last 3 years has been a real wake up call for me. I'm thankful for doing it, coming out with my story. But on the other hand, I'm going. A lot of people are going to know a lot about me, and I guess in this internet world, and you can about find out anything you want about anybody anyway. But it gave me an opportunity to talk very simple and talk from my heart. And that's the way I try to do things. Uh, and It's just me. And there's, I can't fake it because what happened to me is real. Just like things that have happened to you, Bill, are real. My story is very simple. I I was 28 years old, and was I thought money was all I wanted in life, and I did everything I could to get that money. And one day I came home during Christmas holidays and decided I was going to go skiing, and therefore I was in that selfish state again. Called a friend up and we went skiing, and one of the most beautiful ski resorts there is. It's Park City, and it's in Utah. But I was standing in a lift line after making some of the best runs I think I've ever made. There's nothing like putting those first tracks in fresh powder. And we were standing in the lift line, and I kind of glanced to the side and saw a lady coming down, and she had poles going every which way, and skis were crossing, and you know, obviously she hadn't been on the ski slopes very much, but she ran into about three of us, knocked all three of us down like a bunch of pins at a bowling alley. And we picked her up and we brushed her off and set her on her way and didn't think anything more of it. We just went up and started skiing for the rest of the day. Well, at the end of the day, I started taking my boots and bindings off, and I took my left glove off, and then I took my right glove off, and I put my hand up, And I thought something is really strange here. My fingers were going up like this, but my thumb was hanging down all the way to my wrist. And I often wondered why I never felt that through the day, but it was so cold that day. And back then, and it was, we didn't have the ski gear that they have today. And so the cold, I'm sure, just kept it numb for the day. And we went over to the ski resort there and made a phone call to my wife and went down to, traveled about an hour to get down to the hospital. And my wife was there waiting for me. And she'd made arrangements with a surgeon to operate on my thumb. Well, we got me all prepped and started going into the operating room. My wife was walking beside me, and she had to stop there at the waiting room. You know, back then, I didn't realize how selfish I was. I didn't even thank her for what she had done to set everything up. I didn't even tell her I loved her. I never told my kids that I loved them. And what it did is it just, that haunts me even today to see that in my mind. But as you well know, Bill, when you have an experience, you see it and you witness it every single day. Well, what happened is they wheeled me into the operating room, and the doctor was told when we got in there that the anesthesiologist was called away on emergency, but he had another technique that he could do, and it was called a bear block. And I don't know if you're familiar with the bear block, but it's basically an air tourniquet that they put around your arm, and it has two knobs on it, one to release pressure, one to tighten up to put pressure back on. And they put a sheet between me and where the doctor was operating on so that I really couldn't watch what was going on. It was out of my view. And he started to work on it. Well, back then, when you did a bear block, it wasn't run by machines, it was run by humans. And sometimes things are good that happen, some things are not. But what did happen was the pressure started coming in my arm, and I made mention to the doctor that I can feel pressure in my arm. And so what he did is had the nurse release one of the valves, which worked great. It felt good because it released the pressure in my arm. But as time went on, the pressure started building up again in my arm. And so the nurse opened the second one by mistake. And what happened is the medicine went up my arm, across my chest, and into my heart. And the next thing that I knew, I was standing above my body watching this surgery. And I'll never forget that because it was almost like I knew who that person was laying down on the table. Why was that me? And to look over to the other way and watch the operation, because I was above where I could see the operation. I could see the doctor working on me. I could see him cut the tendons in my arm and wrapping around my thumb. I watched him put a pin in my thumb, which was a little bit too long, and him being concerned that because it would have protruded through my skin. And then I started watching him, Bill, stitch me back up. And I noticed to the side of me, I could feel another person. And there was a person standing next to me. And this person started to talk to me. And what happened was he was talking to me through my mind. But yet I could hear everything verbally or, out in front of me. I could hear them talking. When the machine flatlined, the nurse went running out of the room and told the doctor that she had killed me. And I still feel bad about that because I still don't think that it was her fault. I think that it was just the situation that I was in. Well, at that time, And when she went running out, I mean, there was a lot of commotion in the room, and people were trying to revive me, and I sat there and watched the whole thing. When they started working on me and starting to put my thumb back together, the person next to me said, "It's time to go." And I went, and this, of course, this was all through my mind. We were talking, and we went, to the most beautiful place that you'll ever imagine. I've never seen colors like this before. There was, it was almost like a panoramic view. And I was able to stand there and kind of look a little bit. And then I was instructed by the person that was walking beside me that I was never to look back. And when he said that, I knew that I was I was dead. He said that I could look side to side and I could look in front of me, but again, he reminded me I wasn't allowed to look back. Well, on the left of me, in the distance, was tall trees, and they were the most. I'll never forget looking at those trees because the trees in the redwoods, the sequoia trees, are very tall but have great big trunks, and that's the way these trees were. But the unusual part was the colors of the leaves on the very top were brilliant. I mean, brilliant burgundies and reds and greens and two types of greens, lights and darks and yellows, and then the underneath side of those leaves, as I was studying, was a gold color, which was beautiful. I've never seen gold colors like that before. And then looked at the trunks on the trees, and generally a trunk is very dirty. Well, these trunks were brilliant. The browns were brilliant, and they were lined with a gold edge on them as I was looking at them. Then to my left, in between the trees and me, were wildflowers. And these wildflowers were the most beautiful and unusual looking flowers that I have ever seen. But the thing I noticed about all these wildflowers was they all faced towards me. The leaves faced towards me, the flowers faced towards me. There was nothing that was out of my view. And it was like they were giving me love. It was a very comforting feeling. And I remember those wildflowers coming up to about my waist because I put my left hand out, touched it, and I could feel the energy coming from these flowers. Now, directly in front of me and to my right was tall grass. And again, it was up to about my waist because I put my hands out and I touched them. And every one of those pieces of grass, it was green on the bottom, but it was gold tips. They were all facing towards me as if to give me energy. And the energy from those flowers and the grass and the trees was just something I'd never felt before. We know we sometimes feel love here on earth, but to feel the pure love is something that I can't even describe. Again, the grass was giving me energy and showing me a love that I'd never felt before. Now in front of me was three clouds, and the middle cloud was very much brighter, more of a pearl color. And if you look at a pearl color, a lot of times there's blacks and blues and silvers, and there's all different colors. Well, that's what the middle cloud looked like. But the two outer clouds were pretty, they were still brilliant white, but they weren't as bright as the one in the middle. And then to the side of the clouds was a brilliant blue, like an iridescent blue.
It was so bright that it was almost hard to even look at it. Now, something that I haven't talked about is I did not feel any wind. I didn't feel a breeze, but what I did feel, it was an energy, a feeling of energy. Clouds didn't move, the grass didn't move. It flowed. Everything flowed, and it was like time was not of the essence. It was just pure. And then something happened, Bill, that I will never forget. I felt that person beside me gone. And when you feel alone, a lot of times we get anxiety, or we tense up, or we wonder what's going on. But I didn't feel that. I felt so loved that it was something I can't really explain. I stood there for a few minutes, and all of a sudden something happened that I watched my life. I watched my life from the day that I was born, when I was put on my mother's chest, all the way until I was 28 years old. I saw things that I wasn't very proud of, but there was some things that I was proud of. And everything that was done in this was done in black and white, good or bad. There was nothing, there was no gray matter in the middle. What you did is what you did, and it was real. And I watched growing up, I watched my parents and how much time they put into me in my sports. And I had the opportunities to play professional ball in Germany. I had a chance to play college baseball because of all of the stuff that my parents prepared me for. And I don't even remember ever telling them thank you for all the time they put in. One of the things that I remember probably the most, it's not about what I did, but it's what I did to my wife and kids and my friends. I found out real quick that life isn't about money. When I was standing there in that field, I didn't see motorhomes or boats, or I didn't see fancy cars that I had. I didn't see any of the money that I had made with me. It was just me. And what I learned probably the most is how I should have treated people better. And many times we are in business field, and we do everything we can to get ahead. And even when I was playing sports, I did everything I could do to be better than that other person. It didn't matter how I treated them. But after this experience, I found out that it wasn't about me. It was about other people and what I could do to help other people. I'm not perfect at this by any means, but what I have now is I pay attention to what's going on around me. And if there's somebody that I can help in any way, I'm prompted to do that. And when I'm prompted to do it, I have to do it. If I don't do it, I lose that privilege of having that prompting. After that experience, Bill, there was nobody there to argue with or tell, what happened, or from my point of view, or it was what it was. And I realized right then that whatever was going to happen next, it was because of the way I treated people. Well, after that was over, I stood there for a few minutes and just kind of, like most of us do, and just kind of think about what we went through. And a voice came to me and to walk forward. And I started walking forward towards this cloud that was in the middle. And every one of the pieces of grass and the flowers and the trees it was like they were wrapping their arms around me and pulling me forward. And the rays that came from in back of the clouds, it was like they were wrapping around me and pulling me forward. Now, I wished I could explain to you how that feeling was. It was the most beautiful feeling that I've ever felt. I accepted what I had done. I realized some things I did good, some things I didn't do good. But what it was, it was real. Well, when I got up next to the cloud, Bill, I saw an arm come through the cloud. I only saw this much of it. The arm came through and I stood there and I studied that arm. And it seemed like eternity, but it was not. It was, I just looked at his arm and noticed the upper part of his arm was very strong. And that it had to have been someone that either did construction or, or farming, or maybe even a carpenter. Then I went down his arm and looked at his hands, and his hands were strong. Bill, I'm 6'3" and I weigh 260, and I'm not a small guy, but his hands were bigger than mine. And I can't tell you how I was so impressed by the way his hands looked and his arm looked. I've had so many people ask me what color they were. Bill, there were no colors. It was so pure that I did not see color. And I reached up to grab the hand. But before that, Bill, I could sense people behind that cloud. I could feel people, and I knew that I was going to see people on the other side of that cloud that had been passed away before me. And then all of a sudden, when I reached up to grab that hand, he pulled it back, and the cloud disappeared. The hand disappeared into the cloud, and the voice came through the cloud and said, "It is not yet your time. You have more things yet to do." And I'll never forget that. That comes into my mind every day since I was 28 years old. It is not yet your time. You have more things yet to do. The next thing I knew, Bill, I was on the table and there was a sheet over my head, and I flipped the sheet off and scared the doctor to death, because on my chest there was a certificate that said that I'd been dead for 20 minutes. And they were wheeling me out of the room, and the doctor went over to my wife and said, "He's okay. Everything went just fine. We brought him back." And of course, my wife knew nothing about this. And having 3 kids at the time, I can't imagine how freaked out she probably was when the doctor told her that. Bill, for 3 days, I was gifted with total peace. I had never felt total peace in my life, ever. There's always some kind of anxiety or some kind of things that are going on in your life that you're always, what if? Well, I felt total peace. And I'll never forget the doctor coming in and asking me how I was doing. And then he stopped. It was the most unusual. He just stopped. He said, "Why was you all over the table?" Because I guess when I came out, there was a war going on in my body, and I didn't want to come back. It was something that I had never felt before. I'd never felt love like that before. It wasn't something that was demonstrated in our family at all. It was just something that when we did something, it was expected of you. And so I never heard I love you ever when I was growing up. It was just work harder. And I told the doctor, I said, and this really bothers my wife now, but I didn't want to come back because I'd felt something so pure. The last day that I was in, on the third day, a reporter came in, and he'd been doing a story on people that had had near-death experiences. And he asked me if I'd tell my story, and I told him no. And now, 40 plus years later, I'm telling my story. And when I told it for the first time, I'll never forget, it was almost like something had been lifted off my shoulders, because I didn't think anybody would believe me. My wife knew a little bit about it. She knew the most. My kids knew virtually nothing about my story. And to be honest, I'd have been okay taking my story to my grave. But when you're asked to do something by a higher power, you better do it. And so I did it. And the results of it have just been incredible. I've had opportunities to talk to people all over the world. And, I never thought I'd talk to somebody in China about my experience. And, a country that is told they're atheists and they have no beliefs, and their God is their prime minister, but they still believe in their families. I could go on for hours, Bill, about talking about experiences that I've had with people, just like you, traveling all over the world and sharing your love with other people. And that's my goal from here out. I'll travel as long as I can, but when the body breaks down, I'm going to be right here in my own home, just enjoying my retirement. If this book only sells to one person, Bill, I'm okay. Because I didn't do this for gain. If I have to do another report and tell my Father in heaven that I made money off of my experience, I don't think I could do it. I don't think I could tell him that I did it for any other reason other than to help other people. In fact, when we did this book, I went to my lawyer and said, I want to set up a foundation, because the proceeds from this book are going to go to this foundation. And he helped us set it all up. We got a 501c3, and the Gracie Scott.org Foundation is one of the things that I'm the most proud of. If I can help children that have special needs to have a better life, this is something that I really want to do. And this is a goal that my wife and I wrote down when we started this journey, was to help these kids. And it's been amazing at the people that have donated to this foundation. I'm thrilled because, my granddaughter was born at 23 weeks. She was a pound, and she spent 6 months at Primary Children's Hospital in an incubator. And when she was born, she had no eyes. She had a definition of ears. Her fingers were webbed. And we watched her grow. At 23 weeks, we watched her grow. She's now 11 years old, still on a feeding tube, still has disabilities, but is one of the happiest little girls that you'll ever run into. And if you go to our website, graciescott.org, you'll see pictures of her through the years. And the smile that she has on every single picture is just unbelievable. So this book is good. I love it. I love doing it. It was the hardest thing I've ever done is to tell people what happened to me and the feelings that I have. But again, Bill, if I can help one person, I've done everything that was asked of me.
Wow. So obviously, you came back for a reason, and you had something still to do, and you're doing that now.
Bill, can you hang on just a minute? My earbuds just went dead.
Take them
I
out.
need to get you on the screen, okay?
Well,
Chelsea, can you come here for a minute? The earbuds went dead.
Okay, we had a technical issue there between Utah and California. Hopefully, when people are watching this, they're not going to see this long, crazy stuff we had on there. But I was truly touched by your story, and I think other people will when they see it or when they read it. And you mentioned you wrote this book not for profit, not for ego, not for fame, not for anything but love. And so I'd like you to hold up that copy of the book. Tell us the name of it, where they can get it, where's it for sale.
It's called What Dying Taught Me About Living. It's by me and my ghostwriter, who is Sandy Ponton. And you can buy this book at Barnes and Noble, or you can buy it through Amazon. It's done on ebook right now. And presently, I'm just finishing up the Audible for the book.
Well, that would be a moving audio to get, actually. So I know that you have a lot of stuff going on. This was it's beyond interesting interview with all the stuff that happened in between. But honestly, you didn't see me saying much during the interview because the story is itself. And obviously, it wasn't your time to go. And the purpose was looking back on it. Your purpose all this time was to experience life, get to this point, and then go out and share this because it is time to share it. Because the country out there right now, the world, it's very negative. People are depressed, anxiety ridden, fearful. And then you come with, there's hope, there's life goes on, there's consciousness. We're not just this body, you know. And I look in the mirror and I say, thank God we're not just this body. So, but I'm going to post a picture or at least a link to your book on Amazon so people can order it. And I look forward to selling 20 million books. What the heck? I mean, you had no control over the success of your story. And in spite of everything you did to slow it down, not continue it, to pull back from it, people like me just kept dragging you into this, basically.
Bill, you didn't drag me into anything.
The divine is plotted against you. Don't let them rest. No rest for the wicked, right?
Yeah, you're right. Presently I'm preparing to speak at the IONS conference back in Alexandria, Virginia. And it is so humbling to even be asked because I'm not a doctor. I'm not a researcher. I'm not a psychiatrist. It's just me. And I asked him, I said, why are you having me speak? And they said, because you actually had the experience. And yes, I did have the experience, but I'm finding out and talking to people all over the world that I'm not the only one that's had experiences. But people just don't talk about them because they're afraid they're going to be degraded, ridiculed, called freaks. And believe it or not, I tried at the very first to talk a little bit about it. And the looks on people's faces, I knew that they wouldn't understand what I went through. But talking about it now, and you know, as a 70-year-old man, it's maybe I can help somebody. And I'm at that stage now where, there's a lot of youth out there that are just suicide is such a big thing right now with kids and teenagers and people. If we can go into a grocery store, just for an example, and just smile at somebody, or have the inclination when a lady is going through her coin purse to pay for the groceries with her 3 kids that are right there by her, and pay for them. We have to do it. I feel like in my mind, if I don't do that, I've lost that connection between the gift that was given to me, and I don't want to lose that gift. That gift is more important to me than anything. In the book, I don't talk about my gifts. And Bill, you came back with gifts. Everyone that I talk to that has had an experience has come back with gifts. My gifts are very simple. I see colors different. They're much more vibrant and brighter. I can taste colors. How I do it, I can't tell you. I just can do it. I can look at the food on my plate and know whether or not it's good or not. And if it's not, I can't eat it. It's little things like this that are very precious in my life. I'm a gardener, and I love gardening, because one of the gifts that I received was I can put a seed in my hand and I can watch it grow to maturity. And I know whether or not that plant is going to bear good fruit. If it doesn't bear a good fruit, I don't plant that seed. I know the other thing that I learned was we can plant seeds everywhere that we are in life. Just by being kind to somebody is a seed that you're planting in somebody's life. You can smile at somebody, and maybe that smile kept him from committing suicide that day. There's people all around us, our neighbors, our friends, people in grocery stores, Home Depot of all places, loading up a truck and they're struggling to put it in the truck because they're one person trying to do it. Stop, help them, and make a new friend. And we all can do this. This is simple things. A lot of times we get caught up in our own lives and I haven't got time for that. Well, being retired, I got a lot of time on my hands. At least I did until I started doing this book.
Huh?
But I'm thrilled to be here. I got a second chance. Actually, I got a third chance. I've been hit by a wave too. And
Well,
my
again, when you had your near-death experience, which was 40 some years ago, 50 years ago, times have changed. I noticed when I spoke I was in Salt Lake City, in February, and I thought, well, this would be an interesting group. It's like 90% Mormons that came to hear me talk. And I'm going, are they open to this? My God, one of my most receptive audiences that I've ever had. I mean, totally open. The time has come. People are looking for something to lean on, to believe on, and have faith in. And so your story is one of those things that gives people faith that, okay, this is the path. There is something that continues on. So I thank you for sharing your story. And even with all our technical difficulties, it's still going to be a beautiful video to watch. It doesn't matter.
Well, people are going to find out, Bill, that we're not professionals.
You got it.
That we are who we are.
That's it. So,
Bill, can I before we close, I have one thing to say. Don't look back. Live today as if it's the best day you'll ever have, and plan for tomorrow. Thank you.
Wow, that says it all. Your book, once again, hold it up. Let's share that. What dying taught me about living. That says it all. Blessings
Thank
to you, Scott. And thank you for sharing this with me today.
Thank you for allowing me to be on your show. It's quite an honor.